This video is for students who are registered in CS222 at Ball State University. This is Dr. Gistwicki, and in this video I'll show you how to hit the ground running in this exciting and challenging course. One of the first things you'll need to do is download the Java development kit that your course requires. Check the course plan and make sure you get the right version. In my case, it's JDK 13. Download that, put it on your system, and keep track of where it is because you'll need that location in just a moment. You'll also need IntelliJ IDEA. You can download the free community version and install that. Once that's done, you can run it, and you'll get a window that looks something like this. Now, if you've previously created projects in IntelliJ IDEA, you can always get back to this window by choosing Close Project from the File menu. The first thing we want to do is tell the IDE which version of Java we're going to be using. So in the Configure menu, we can choose Structure for New Projects. Now you can see I've already configured this machine properly. What you'll need to do is click on New, JDK, and then navigate to wherever you put that JDK. That should be all you need there. Now you should be okay to create a new project. I want to make a regular Java project in my case. Notice it's using the SDK that I want. And I'll call it Hello World. Okay. So if we take a look at the project, we can see there's a source folder which is empty. SRC stands for source. If you're new to this IDE, it's helpful to know that you can click on these tabs on the side to open and close panels, and you can click on this button on the corner to show or hide those frames. All right, now in this class we'll be talking a lot about test-driven development, and that means I want to write a unit test before I write any production code. So the first thing I need is a place to put my unit tests. So I'll right-click on the project, I'll say New Directory. I'll call it Test. I right-click on that and say Mark Directory as Test Sources Root. Good. That sets me up so that I have a source folder for all my production code, and I have a test folder for all my test code. Inside the test folder, I want to make a package because we always want our Java classes to be inside of a package. And the convention here is that you take the name of your institution and turn it around. So this will be edu.bsu. And inside of there, we'll call this a CS222 Hello World. Great. I'll put my test case in there. And I'll call it Greeter Test. Perfect. So I'm going to write my first test case. And in order to do that, I need to say @test. Now, notice that IntelliJ IDEA doesn't know what that is, but there's a very helpful keyboard shortcut here that we can use, which is Alt-Enter. Alt-Enter brings up a pop-up where we can say which version of JUnit to add to the project in order to make it recognize the annotation. In this case, I'm using JUnit 5, so I'll click on that. The default there is correct. After a moment of configuration, it does kind of a weird thing. It takes my test and replaces it with a dynamic test, which isn't actually what I want. But that's okay. I can go back to where I was, hitting Control-X, kill those lines. And now if I say @test, good, that's exactly what I want, is test from that package. I'll press Enter, and notice it does the import for me automatically. Great. I love the fact that the IDE can do some of that drudgery for me so that I can focus on the creative problem solving. All right. I'm going to make my test called test say hello. Now inside of this test, I'm going to write the code that I want to work. Remember, this is the way of test-driven development, is we think about what should the code do, and we write the test as a sort of specification. So in my case, I'm going to make a thing called a greeter. Now, of course, it doesn't exist yet, right? So it shows up in red, but that's fine. I mean, I know it doesn't exist. I'm kind of imagining the code that I want to work. If I tell the greeter to say hello, then I want it to give me back an appropriate message. So I will store that into a variable called greeting. Now, I'll know that my greeter is working properly if the thing that it gives me is the text hello. So I need to put an assertion here. And so I can get that from the assertions class from JUnit. And then I can say assert equals. Now these assert equals methods, they're always in the order of expected and then actual. So in this case, my expected value is hello. My actual value is whatever the value of this variable is. Good. Now you probably noticed as I was typing that, kind of a weird thing happened. This grayed out text expected showed up here, but I can't select it. I can't really do anything with it. This is called an inlay hint in IntelliJ IDEA, and this is a terrible feature. Now, one of the problems is it takes up a lot of horizontal space, and I don't want that because I want to have good tight lines and I want to know exactly where my right margin is. It also encourages us to write bad code because it's throwing in this extra stuff that's not code, but then it becomes a bit of a crutch, and we don't want that. Instead, what we want is clean code. We want code that is like poetry, that's beautiful to read, and this is just going to get in our way. So it turns out it's really easy to disable that. We right-click on it, disable hints. Great. That's exactly what we want. Now it's just the code. Excellent. Okay. In order to run our test, we need to write enough code that this compiles. So let's go ahead and make the greeter class. Now we could do this kind of in the long way, which I'll show you how to do. We can once again create that package, edu.bsu.cs222.hello world. And inside of there, we can right click and say new Java class and call it greeter. And there it is. But that's a good example of this kind of plumbing work, this kind of mechanical work that's not real interesting. Let me show you an easier way to do this. I'm going to go ahead and delete that thing I just made. Yeah, we'll delete it. And we'll delete that package and come back over to our test case. Now, what I'll do here is press again Alt-Enter, and the IDE super helpfully says, do you want to create that class? Yes, I do. The trick here is by default, it wants to put it into the test directory because that's where I'm working. I need to tell it to put it in the source directory. Great. Notice over here, on the fly, this recompiles and recognizes that that class exists now. Okay, we can do the same kind of thing here with the say hello method. If you're feeling like typing, you could come over here and type it all in, which, you know, if you're a little rusty with your Java, maybe that's not a bad idea. But I want to get right to the point here, so I'll say Alt-Enter, create that method. Great, here we are. I'm going to take a triangulation approach, which means rather than try to solve the problem correctly right away and hope I get it, I'm going to implement this in a way that I know is incorrect to make sure I can see that the rest of my system is set up correctly. So let me just have this return null, which is kind of the simplest thing it can return. Notice that now this compiles, and now I can run my tests. Remember, when we're running our unit tests, we always want to run all of them, not just this one. So I'll right-click on the test directory and say Run All Tests. This will take a moment to configure the first time, and then it'll show us that the test fails. There it is. Now this is the red step of red-green refactor. It's exactly where we want to be. The expected value was the string hello. The actual value was null. Let me point out there's kind of a useful extra optional parameter here in the assert equals method, and that's a message that it shows if the test fails. So we can add something like this. So if I save that and rerun the tests, and I can run the tests from here, I can right click on this and say run all tests. I can click over here, they'll all do the same thing. Rerun all the tests. The tests will still fail, but I'll see a slightly more user-friendly error message. Yeah, so see here it says, greeter says hello. That's exactly what failed. So as long as I have that there, I'll leave it there. Now what I'd like to do is actually make the test pass. So this is pretty easy, right? I'll do that and rerun my tests. Now my tests pass. Great. So that's red-green refactor. I've done red, I've done green. The last step is refactoring, which remember means to improve the design of the program without changing its behavior. And now I can see in here, you know, for the first week of class, this is pretty clean. During the semester, we'll spend a lot of time learning about how to write high-quality code, how to make sure we're refactoring effectively. But for now, this is enough to get you started. So I hope that's useful. I look forward to seeing you in class.